Well, hello there. You must be that chairman I've heard so much about. It's good to finally put a face to your reputation. What's this now? Oh, nice. Thank you for the hot tea. Did Levi tell you how to make this? Oh, yes, it smells perfect. I'll give it a minute before I drink it. It's still very hot. So Levi told me you waited tables before you came here. Is that right? Because if you did, you must be very good at it. Don't sell yourself short, kid. Now, how are we doing? Let me just sit up a bit. Don't worry, I can manage it. If you don't mind, I would enjoy the opportunity to talk to you. Oh, no, nothing's wrong. I was just hoping you could spare a minute or two for an old man. There aren't a lot of people for me to talk to these days, and it would mean the world to me if I could have your ear. Thank you. You're a good kid. Go ahead and take a seat. Get comfortable. I won't take very long. I know you have your fair share of cats to wrangle. How long have you been taking care of werewolves like me? I see. I heard this place was new, but I had no idea that it was this new. Well, that's very exciting. Do you like your job? Well, making a living can be quite a privilege in our circumstance. I'm glad we can do it. Some of us, as you might know, can't. Do you live close? Well, that makes for a pretty short commute. Do you have a car? That's good. I hear those are very reliable. I read you can make one of those last 1,000,000 miles if you're good at it. And you take good care. My last one was a Jeep. I got almost 380,000 miles on it before I couldn't stand to drive it anymore. It rattled and it smelled like burnt oil. The transmission jostled me around, and I suspected if I didn't get rid of that car, it would have gotten rid of me. Are you married? Have kids? No, you don't need to say sir. Feel free to call me Bill. So, no kids, no lady at home. Is it because you're a werewolf, or is there some other reason? Good for you. You do what makes you happy. And I mean it. You better do what makes you happy, because if I find out you spent your whole life miserable, I'm going to come out of the ground and kick your ass. You hear me? So, does this sweetheart of yours know that you're a werewolf? Oh, good. Well, that's great. You have someone there who understands you. Is this place a non-smoking resort? Yeah, I think I saw the smoking area. It's a bit of a walk, though. I think I'll just tough it out. Do you smoke? Good. It's a nasty habit. You stay away from the bottle, too. These can be loyal friends, but not good ones. So I heard you guys serve dinner here. Any idea what's on the menu tonight? That sounds really good. That's the kind of food that sticks to your ribs. Do you think it's possible that I could get my dinner while I'm transformed instead of beforehand? My monster doesn't have trouble chewing and swallowing. You don't say. Well, if someone wants to scrap with me for a chance at my supper, well, that's my idea of a good time. You might find it's not as unfair as you think. See, my monster can handle himself. He's as spry as when he first arrived, or so I remember. It's been a very long time. Things were different for everyone, but especially for us werewolves. Back in those days, I might have been a little older than you are. It was commonplace to have a sanitarium within driving distance. Every major city had one, maybe more. I had an agreement with a nearby sanitarium and they kept my secret. Let me use a padded room every full moon. And in exchange, I would put in some volunteer hours and look away from whatever law enforcement did. I realized even at the time that those terms were less than ideal. Believe me, I would have been more of an idealist if it was ever an option. So every full moon, I would go into a padded cell for the night. I would give them my clothes so I wouldn't ruin them, and I'd have something to play with, like the occasional live chicken. Those were nice. I tried to be accommodating to my monster, but at that age, it was just a huge inconvenience. Unlike these days, where it's the highlight of my month. I thought of him as a burden that didn't affect anyone else I knew. I had so much jealousy for everyone else, but looking back, it was a lot more livable than I realized. It wasn't long before the public opinion changed about sanitariums. These places made promises to the families of patients, but time told these people that those promises were hollow. Because of that, the number of people willing to bring their family members in for treatment dwindled. The state paid the bills at a certain rate per patient, so when patients left and the room stayed vacant, the shareholders of each sanitarium might liquidate as many assets as they could. They left the staff with less than the basic supplies to keep these folks healthy. Forget mental treatment, these folks weren't allowed to leave and they didn't have their own bars of soap. They had to share. The staff were all reeling from a pay cut and they still had to wash these people's clothes at their own homes. It came as no surprise to me when I overheard that they couldn't deal with the disturbance anymore. That's how they referred to my monster. They were all aware the legal authorities offered a monetary incentive for information that led to the capture of a werewolf. It was only a matter of time before my luck would run out. And just like my car, I decided to get ahead of the curve. The last time I shifted there, I took care of the remaining patients. I did everything I could that morning to give the staff a break. I felt like they still deserved something for everything they did and everything they kept doing. I told them that since I missed breakfast, I would go out to Granny's donut shop and bring 'em back some donuts. Now, if you've ever had one of Granny's donuts, you'll know there's something special about them. It didn't matter what time of day it was, the donuts were always fresh. You'd have a hard time turning one down. And so I left the sanitarium for the last time. I did visit Granny's shop, though. I had to. Granny, or as I knew her, Miss Saltic, was one of my school teachers growing up. I kept in touch, coming out to her shop every so often when she got out of teaching. That day, I tried to pay ahead for someone else from the sanitarium to pick up a box of donuts whenever they wanted. But that sweet Christian woman looked at me with those hazel eyes and asked me why I couldn't do it. Now, son, you understand me. I could lie to a lot of people in this world without feeling guilty. But there and then I couldn't do it, not to her. I didn't want to. And even if I did, she would see through it. Sort of like, oh no, I finished my book report. It was really good too. What a shame. What a disaster that at the very minute I was getting ready, my dog ate it. Darn, you would have really liked it. Can you imagine how that would have gone over? Not well. So I told her what I was. I told her about my monster. And I said, I could no longer stay where people knew about my secret. It would take just one act of desperation, and I would find myself in a bad situation. Worse than the one I was already in. And we talked for a bit, me and her. She tried to get me to look at things a different way, as though I was still studying under her. But I was still stubborn, as I was back when I was a boy. And I couldn't be persuaded. I tried to pay again, and she pushed the money back. I couldn't have anticipated what she did next. I told her I was a werewolf, you remember, and about my monster. And despite everything, this old lady grabbed me by the back of the hand. I couldn't move a muscle. Keep in mind, I was strong back then. And you also have to remember, this was the 80s. People genuinely believed you could become a werewolf by coming in contact with one, just by, I don't know, holding onto one of their hands or what have you. But there she was, taking this big risk like it was no big deal. She placed a quarter in my hand, and it was already warm to the touch, like she had it in her blouse pocket. She closed my hand over the coin and told me that when I got where I was going, to find a payphone and let her know that I got there okay. She wrote down her number, handed it to me, and then I headed out after that. I took the bus north, and a few hours later I was at my stop. I thought I'd make that phone call before it got too late. I found a payphone and pulled out that coin Granny gave me. It was still warm from my pocket. I put the quarter in, I dialed the number, and no one picked up on the other side. I even let it ring for a few minutes. I thought I'd try again at another time. I hung up and picked the quarter up out of the change slot. I thought about using it to buy a local newspaper to see if there were any jobs I thought I could do. But I found a paper right there on the seat at the bus station. I was the only one there, so I figured nobody was going to miss it. I lit up a cigarette and started to read. I started with the jobs. I pulled out a pen and circled a few ads. I read a few stories while I was there, and then I looked at the funnies as well, the ones that I liked. Well, when I thought I'd had enough for the moment, I put the paper down, and that's when I realized there was a young man, about 25, sitting right across from me. The guy was wearing a bespoke Italian-style suit with a champagne vest and shiny black wingtip shoes. He was wearing a fedora over his red hair, and he was looking right at me, which is how I noticed he had a strange, tarnished gold glass eye. I got the impression I took his newspaper, so I offered to pay him back for it. I pulled out the quarter and handed it to him so he could get another newspaper, but he just rotated it in his hand and looked at it while he talked to me. And this guy said I read the paper really fast, and I told him, "Oh yeah, I'm kind of a fast reader." He handed the coin back to me and he said he had a job for me, and oh, these stories never start out well. I saw what I was looking for a moment ago, and I wasn't so sure anymore. I wasn't in the business for any funny business. And I asked if he was some sort of organized criminal, and he said, "Do you have a hard time keeping secrets?" Now I really didn't know where this was going. So I put out my cigarette and I told him I got enough secrets, thank you. I got up to leave, but I didn't know where to go. He got up too and gave me a card. It was for a motel in town. This kid, had told me if I reconsidered that I should go there. Said the room would be paid for and someone would bring me a hot meal. It was on the condition that in the morning I would go out to a car that would be waiting for me to bring me to my new place of employment. Jeez Louise. If I only knew what I was in for. I figured it wasn't a bad deal. If I didn't like the work, I would just try and leave and try something else. I'd gotten myself out of jams before, and I could figure I could do it again. I took him up on his offer. Now, mind you, this was in the 80s. This was before stranger danger. I sure could have benefited from that. And that is how I came to work for your boss. Oh, yes, that's right. I work for your boss as well. Now, I didn't know it then, but I know it now. He's not human. And that creepy eye he has isn't glass. In the 50 years I have known that man, he has not aged a day. And I reckon he never will. Oh, but the job. That's what I was getting to. I ended up working at a library organizing reading material and showing people how to do research, finding new books. It was really nice. It was safe and people were quiet and there was always plenty to read. I got the newspaper every day and I'd archive the historic articles. Gorbachev, Nelson Mandela, the Gulf War, Kurt Cobain, the fall of the Berlin Wall. From my little desk, I saw cancer take people's lives until people got so dang tired of it that they started killing cancer back. Same with AIDS, HIV. I saw medical documentation and research papers being referenced and then later becoming the reference for another thing. I looked forward to what tomorrow brought. Maybe one day the world will be ready to see the research papers on werewolves, the papers the boss saved from being burned. I read about the fulfillment of dreams, and I stayed alive in hopes that I could have that too. Let me tell you, kid, I beat cancer twice, so that I could live long enough to see the day werewolf lives got better. And here you are, at last. Now, truth be told, I was skeptical. When I heard about the werewolf resort, it sounded too good to be true. I expected it to be torn down or to dry up, for the experiment to go horribly wrong and serve as an example of what horrible things can happen when you're kinder to werewolves, and would solidify the view people have of our monsters. But when I learned that my cancer returned again, I had to find out for myself what kind of place this was. The papers, they lean more on the cautious optimism at best, and flat out dangerous if the opinion section is to be believed. Our boss and benefactor told me things are going well, or in his words, exactly according to plan. I wanted an unbiased view. I showed up pretty early today, because I told Levi I wanted to check the place out, and he arranged everything. Guest relations knew I was coming, and God bless them. They helped me with my things and made sure I got up the stairs all right. They really know what they're doing. I have one suggestion, though. An elevator from the parking lot to the resort. Think about it, not every werewolf has it in them to walk up those steps. Plenty of people lose parts of themselves from the encounters that turn them into werewolves. It might even work out for you financially, because you see, the last time I checked, there were only 6 illegal species facilities in all of North America certified to accept patients with mobility problems. Getting a place like this one certified might be an uphill battle, what with the paranoia machine talking on the radio, but if you manage it, you can do a lot of good for the very people who need it most. From what I've seen so far, this place you built here has incredible potential. I'm sure you understand how important this is for you. I have no doubt you are passionate about this. We are so lucky to be alive right now to see this. Granny would have loved it. I bet she would have brought her magic here and made delicious donuts for everyone here. She was like that, and you couldn't stop her. She was a woman beyond ruling. I'd say that not even God could tell her what to do, but one day he did. One day he decided she'd had enough time here, and it was time for her to take the bus home. Levi told me the news. I didn't know how he knew it happened, or how he knew I cared. That kid is full of surprises. He had everything arranged so that I could go to her funeral. He even packed a suitcase. I don't know how that kid will ever retire. He won't know what to do with all that time. A funny thing, I never spent that quarter on anything. Of all the things I remember, it's that quarter stayed with me. And it was always warm. I used to chalk it up to it being close to my body, but other coins weren't like that. Now I brought it with me. That way I had something to hold on to, like a hand. And her family was there. She had so many grandkids. God, how do you make the time? I remember her great-granddaughter, just a little thing, 3 foot high. She sat down next to me in the church. Others were standing, and when I realized how many people were standing, I thought I'd offer them my place since it was getting a little crowded. This little girl reached out and grabbed onto my hand, and the weight of my heart fell down into my feet and kept me from lifting them off the floor. I couldn't take another step if I wanted to. I turned to her, hoping I could brush her off politely, but before I could do anything, she held up her funeral service paper, with her thumb pointing at something. She said, Anyone who knew Miss Edith Granny Saltick was welcome. I sat through the service and the long line of people speaking about her. I envied the bad speakers because they didn't have as much practice as the good ones. I didn't speak, but when I had a chance to, I walked up to the casket and I saw her. Her makeup made her look as lively as ever. Someone had put silver coins over her eyes, and I remember thinking to myself, who can afford silver coins in this economy? I figured the funeral director may have placed them there and they would just remove them before the burial. There was a chance, I thought, that they wouldn't check her hands. I pulled out that coin she gave me years ago, astonishingly still as warm as the moment she placed it in my hand. I then placed the coin into her hand and I said, "When you make it to where you're going, find a payphone and let me know you made it okay." When I let go of the coin, I felt something I hadn't felt in decades. I felt cold. I couldn't remember the last time I shivered, even when I should have. But I was doing it then. Levi was there and he brought me some tea just like you did. I read once that the penalty for being a good person is being missed. I think I beat that because there's no one left to miss me. Maybe my monster. I wonder what he'll do. Maybe he'll get a job in sales with a tie and a pair of thick-rimmed glasses, asking about TPS reports. And he'd be completely unafraid of the world because of the changes that you set in motion. There's just one more thing I need to tell you, and then I'll be done. Our boss seems generous and gracious. On the surface, he offers employment and sustainable lifestyles to people like us who don't have the chance to do it otherwise. I don't think it's out of the kindness of his own heart. I think he specifically seeks out society's would-be rejects, 'cause then he has an employee for their lives. I'm like so many other people here. I can't leave. I've got nowhere to go. This man, this non-human creature, whatever he is, he might appear as though he cares about you. But really, we're all part of the plan. And he's so obsessed with this big plan that he's willing to do terrible things to make it work. You don't believe me? Let me ask you this. Have you ever wondered why an event you couldn't resist happened on the night of the full moon? Happened the night you were bitten. Has it crossed your mind that it was very convenient that there were 3 rangers with firearms ready to slay the werewolf that attacked you just 1 second after it dug into your leg? Do you ever think that it was odd that these rangers were patrolling a town that doesn't even have a ranger post? And once they killed that werewolf, they didn't continue the patrol, which would have been in accordance with the Ranger Association handbook. Forgive me, I'm a little short of breath here. I think I've taken up enough of your time. I'm so grateful for your ear. And I look forward to seeing your monster, my friend. I think I'm just going to lie down for a while.